without a doubt probably one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life, being up here today. Sally, thank you for having me. It's incredible. As Sally mentioned, I wrote a book that comes out in a month, and I woke up this morning really not knowing what to expect from the meeting today, and I've spent probably the last month writing this speech, and I was very intentional about every word that I picked in this speech by really wanting it to resonate. When I wrote Jumping into the Parade, it was, at the time, a cathartic experience for me to understand what had happened in my own life. I was the CEO of a company, as Sally had mentioned. I was in that role for about a decade. When the markets collapsed in late 08, 09, our cost basis was considerably higher. I lost $55 million. And I had always connected my works as a person to my worth, and I really wasn't sure what to do about it. I went on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication in August of 09 after my first attempt at ending my life, and decided in August of 2011 that I was healed, that I was fine, and in November of 2011 I found out that the awareness that I had been given by well-meaning people, I'd never really integrated the tools, hadn't really done the work. I was off medication in New York and almost ended my life a second time. And I decided that I needed to really figure out what it was inside of me that had caused this, that I couldn't live like that anymore. And I had been ashamed of my story. I had been ashamed of how I grew up. I was ashamed of being a CEO that lost that much money. I'd never lost at anything in business before that point in time. I was a self-made millionaire by the time I was 30. It was a very riveting time in my life, and so I've rewritten and thought about this speech, and it's funny after you spend hours writing a speech and then you wonder if you just toss it out. But anyway, the last 3 years I have rebuilt my entire life. I've rebuilt my entire perspective about how we live our lives as human beings. I didn't write my book really to tell my story. I wrote my book to help people understand that they're not hopeless or helpless. It was really never about my story. It was about their story and how you give people new perspective and new tools to get through life and to live life more powerfully. And as I go through here, I'm going to talk about really the things that transformed my life. And it's been phenomenal to go through this because I think about, in the past, I used to carry a different set of values with me in so many respects. I didn't know it at the time, but as Tim Brown, the CEO, versus Tim Brown as a father, versus Tim Brown as a husband, versus Tim Brown as a philanthropist. And I felt like I was always pleasing different masters in so many respects. And one day it caught up with me, and it just doesn't work that way. So my whole viewpoint on the world has shifted, and it's all about living inside my truth now and inside my integrity as a person. And I don't mean integrity as the difference between right and wrong. I mean integrity about knowing who you are on the inside. I mean, how are you supposed to communicate to other people in life what it is that you need if you don't even know who you are on the inside? You can't do it. And so I started studying what causes depression. And I read and I read and I read, and there was a ton of well-meaning information out there, a ton of it, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't connect it to my own story. I couldn't get over the immense amount of shame that I felt, and it wasn't until I was praying and the whole idea of the book got placed on my heart that I decided that I was going to figure it out. And honestly, it's a path that I'm still walking down. I'm 3 years almost into it, and I think of the courage that it takes for people with alcohol or drug addiction to get up every day and have to recommit to that life that they've picked. And that is my life now. I recommit every day to living. I recommit every day to helping others and serving. And frankly, we're all connected. And it's funny, right? I can remember one of the first things I learned as a CEO is that when you're telling a story, there's always a story playing in the person's head that you're talking to. And so you have an opportunity to really shift perspective. And I've always been of the belief as a CEO that it's a servant-based leadership model because you're only as strong as your team. And people never leave companies, people leave people. And if you look at the number one reason why people leave companies, it's never about compensation. It's about people wanting to feel that they're part of something bigger than themselves, that they matter. Humans are communal animals, and we love to be accepted. And we love to feel like we have value. And when we don't, we retreat, we move on, we hide. At least I did. So as I go through on the top things that really brought me out of it, I'm not going to talk about statistics today. I was, and then I changed my speech. I am not going to talk about the fact that losing Robin Williams was tragic. I'm not going to talk about the loss of one life seemingly being more important than the 105 people in the US we lose every day. I think we all know those statistics. The loss of one life is awful. I can remember President Nixon made a comment. I obviously wasn't, I was 4 at the time, but he made a comment during the Vietnam conflict that we had only lost one life that day and how that was good news, and that CBS News had done a report about the story of the soldier who had died in battle and about who that person was. They brought a name to the face that was just in print. And that's the same thing. I mean, we all are connected. Everybody has the same emotions in many respects. Many people have a lot of the same stories. And there's a way to lift people up and to give them hope and to give them tools, frankly, that they can live their lives more powerfully. And in a way that isn't based on a bunch of platitudes. Platitudes are fine, but a one-size-fits-all kind of approach about depression or, this taboo thing about mental illness that a lot of people don't want to talk about is ridiculous. It's completely, in many respects, curable. If 40 million Americans have depression and 80% of that's curable long-term without medication, doesn't that tell you something? It tells me something. I mean, my story was a kid that grew up poor, that grew up with an alcoholic mother that had her own mental illness issues. At age 7, I was digging through dumpsters in South Florida collecting bottles and cans, and I started to see the way other people were living. And so at age 7, I made the decision, if you can believe this, to abdicate self in lieu of a model of, if I make it out there, I'll be fine in here. And that never worked. It wasn't until I was in therapy with one of my coaches in Seattle this summer in June when she finally unlocked something for me that was unbelievable. My whole life had been built around this 7-year-old kid in South Florida digging through a dumpster that no one would ever love, no one would ever want. And she said, that 7-year-old is a hero. That 7-year-old was doing the best he could to help his family out, and he had no idea about judgment at that time or no idea how people would feel. He was just doing something to help his family out. And it shifted everything for me. Everything. And I firmly believe that people come in and out of your life for a reason. And that we have the experiences that we do in life for a reason. And we get to choose on how we want to use those experiences. We can use them for our upliftment, for our betterment, for our learning, or we can become victims of our old story. I was a victim of my old story. I was a victim of being a 7-year-old, and it was pervasive across everything that I did. I married into one of the most prominent families in the United States and went through a lot of learning because I had a father-in-law who really took me under his wing and really loved me unconditionally. And it was the first time in my life when I really felt like I was loved unconditionally. And for me, it was a complete shift of everything when I left that family and I was so ashamed about the fact that I couldn't make things work. And what's powerful about my story is it really has reiterated something to me that is important. I mean, I was given everything. I was given the money, I was given the support, I was given, a loving wife, a great son, everything. And I wasn't able to hold on to those because my self-esteem was so low, and because I always viewed myself as being something that I wasn't. And what's remarkable in life is that, we don't have to let our failures get wrapped around our talent. There really is no such thing as failure. There isn't. And frankly, there's no such thing as success. They're all experiences, and we get to choose how we're going to use them, period. And so what I'm here to tell you today is I'm a big believer in second chances. In fact, I'm a big believer in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth chances. How many times you need to get it right? And on November 29th, 2011, at the Bentley Hotel in New York, I was given a second chance. And I decided, even though I had no roadmap about how I was going to live my life differently, at that point in time, I didn't realize that really we all are connected. I thought I was the only one broken. But that I had an opportunity to go back down that elevator, not jump off the balcony, and to go rebuild my life, even though I had absolutely no idea how it was going to happen. And so I'm standing before you today, almost 35 months later, and I still fight for it every day, and I still believe that you get more in life of what you focus on. And so I'm focused on serving others. I'm focused on serving my son. I'm focused on living my life the way it was intended to be, and not pretending to be something that I'm not, and not going to the outside world and expecting the outside world, who's also PS figuring it out, to validate who I am as a man, as a person, as a father, as a future husband, and all the other things that now that I have been given this blessing to go live my life the way God intended me to, I get to go out and go create, go innovate, go do some wonderful things. And that is the story that I want to give all of the people who go to the bottom, like I did, through depression, that there's hope, that you can come back out. Because when you're in it, for those of you in the room, and you know who you are, who have suffered from depression in your life at some point or another, it coats your reality. You're not just all there. But you can come out of it, and you can come out of it for the rest of your life. You just have to commit in that direction. And so, on that note, I never did read my speech. But I'm grateful to be here today, and we all have the power to go change the world, and it all starts with a small group of well-meaning people, right? And let's go do it. So, thanks.